Okay, welcome everybody. I am Lisa Fain, CEO of Center for Mentoring Excellence. It is National Mentoring Month and it is International Mentoring Day. And it is week 2 of our celebration of longstanding mentoring relationships. And we get to hear from such an incredible, esteemed mentoring pair. I'm so excited to introduce you to them and then to let you hear more about their own story. So I want to do one bit of housekeeping before we do that, which is if you stay to the end, we will be doing a book giveaway. My colleague, Michelle Hancock, is going to be getting the list of attendees and doing a random number generator, and we'll be giving away one copy of Bridging Differences for Better Mentoring or the Mentor's Guide. You can choose to the winner. So stay tuned for that, as well as a link to some free resources so you can learn more about mentoring and incorporate it, effective mentoring in your life. Okay, without further ado, I'm so excited today to have Bishop Dr. Mark McGuire and Judge Walter Rice with us today. I want to tell you a little bit about each of them and then let you hear from them as well. So Bishop McGuire is the staff pastor and the director of discipleship and outreach and evangelism of the Potter's House of International Ministries of Jacksonville, Florida. He's also the executive director of Cure Violence in Jacksonville. He was telling me about this organization as we were talking, just doing incredible work with making sure to help eradicate gun violence in the Jacksonville area and really linking up with a national system that's doing the same. He was selected as Leadership Dayton and the top 10 African-American males in 2018. He's a devoted husband to Angela McGuire, who's a member of our team at Center for Mentoring Excellence, PhD candidate, loving father of 2 sons, and I know you'll learn so much more about him. Judge Walter Rice is a native of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. He's also a graduate of my alma mater, Northwestern University, and got his MBA and his JD from Columbia University. He began his law career as an assistant county prosecutor from Montgomery County, Ohio, and rose in the judicial ranks until he was nominated by President Carter to the U.S. District Court for the Southern District of Ohio in 1980. He served as chief judge from 1996 to 2003 before assuming senior status in 2004. And in 2019, the federal building and U.S. courthouse in downtown Dayton was named in honor of Judge Rice. Judge Rice, Bishop McGuire, welcome. We're so honored to have you here and would love to hear about how did this mentoring relationship come about?
Well, Bishop, should I go first?
Yeah, either way, Judge. Yes, I'll let you go first.
Okay. Lisa, I mentioned this before the program started, that perhaps you've affixed the wrong labels to us. I consider myself more of a mentee than a mentor of Bishop McGuire because I've learned far more from him than he could ever learn from me. And I think that's key in all mentoring relationships, that the two, the mentor-mentee, learn from each other. It's not simply a top-down hierarchical relationship.
Yeah. Thanks for clarifying that. How'd you meet in the first place?
Well, I would say that our meeting was prearranged and not completely voluntary, but it was certainly, as later years proved, a life-changing event for me. Bishop, I'll let you expand on that if you'd like.
Okay. Well, obviously, Judge Rice's name preceded him, and we all in the community knew Judge Rice. And at the time, unfortunately, I had to go see Judge Rice. I was coming from an already serving a sentence on a state charge and still had a federal charge and indictment and conviction to address. And I had to come to the courtroom of Judge Walter H. Rice. And though he was known as a very compassionate and formidable judge, it was federal. And so my first time speaking to him directly is when I was looking at him face to face, he with a robe and a gavel, and me with a jumpsuit and chains.
Mm.
And that was our first encounter in the federal court building there in Montgomery County.
So how does that become a mentoring relationship?
He said something during the hearing. He made some moves in the hearing that I had been a bailiff. Let me say that. I'd worked for a judge for a couple of years, so I'd seen several court cases. And there was something that was supposed to happen with the judge of my state sentence that didn't happen properly. And I heard judge address that, and that was intriguing to me because it was something that was not supposed to take place that took place, and judge wanted it corrected immediately. And I'd never really seen that before. And then judge said to me, you owe this community, that you come from a stock of people, a family that is better than this, and you made a bad decision. You're not a bad person. And I think that after you serve this time that I have to give you, that you owe this community. And probably as much as any human voice, thank God I began to hear the voice of God while I was away, but any human voice, probably as much or maybe more than my mother's voice, I kept hearing in Judge Rice's voice, you owe this community. You owe this community. And so it was a determination of mine that when I did come home, after I see my family, after I go to church and have a service there and prayer, that one of the next persons I needed to see was Judge Rice, and I made that my point.
So what was that like, Judge Rice, to have young Mark McGuire, freshly home, coming back to you and coming to see you, having remembered your words to him?
Well, it was a joy, Lisa, and I'm often visited by people that I have sentenced who have come home from prison, and certainly my meeting with the bishop was no different. I knew when I sentenced him that he was a good person, he had made a mistake, and that based on his background, the sky was the limit for him. And I was glad to see some years later that he was prepared to repay that debt to the community, which he has done and then some. So I was delighted to see him.
How did you determine then that you were going to develop this mentoring relationship? And how did you set the terms of what that relationship was going to look like?
Is that directed to me, Lisa, or to the
Really
bishop?
to both of you, but Judge, why don't you start?
Okay. Really, after our first meeting, when the bishop came home, we did not interact for a while. But I heard from others in the community what he was accomplishing, and all of the goodness and the value that he was providing to the community. So I was anxious to connect with him again. And was I surprised at the steps he had made? No. I was delighted, but not surprised, because so many of the people, Lisa, that I have to send to prison are not bad people. They're decent people, truly, most of whom want to do the right thing, but because of one thing or another, many times things that are beyond their control, they make mistakes and put themselves in a position where they have to be imprisoned. And I've had that premise ever since I've been a judge. And the Mark McGuire that I began hearing such good things about simply confirmed what I had always thought.
I love that. Bishop, how did you take it from there to begin to develop this relationship with Judge Rice?
Yeah, a lot different than Judge. Judge kind of sat back and heard some things. I I hate to say it like this, but I began to stalk the judge. Everywhere I knew where Judge was going to be, every program that Judge was a part of, every meeting where he was going to speak, every dinner, every reception, everything that he was a part of, I just made it my point to get there if I was allowed. There were a couple of times where it was invitation only, that I was turned away, and one time where someone told me to sit in the back. But I just wanted to be sure that after our meeting, that I tried to find out where his focus was in community. And I thought, if this is the person that tells me that I owe something, then he's going to have to be the one to help me get in these doors, so that I can pay that debt. And I just believe that God just guided me to just find out where he was and what he was doing. And just from anything from reentry to the dialogue of race relations, just talking about community excellence and just sitting on different forums, the mentoring collaborative, just anything that his name was going to be on the program, or someone gave me the heads up, Judge Rice is going to be here. There were times that he didn't even speak, but I knew he was going to be in the room. So I wanted to find out what was important to him about the community, and I wanted to make that a part of my life and the ministry.
Was there a point where you approached him and said, Judge Rice, I'd love for you to be my mentor?
I don't think we ever used those words. I think it was just a matter of a couple of times we did see each other in those venues, and he probably remember. He has a memory that's just phenomenal. But just kind of quickly, I would just try to get to him, shake his hand, and say, "Hey, if you ever need me, if there's anything I can ever do or be a part of, please don't hesitate." And so he always was very cordial. Said thank you, looking forward to it. You can count on it. And in the meantime, I just stayed busy doing what I believe God called us to do, until one day I got a phone call from him, and he invited me to a couple places. And then down the road, I got a phone call from him and saying, "Hey, I saw a program in Columbus that they want us to do in Dayton, but I told them I'm not going to do it unless you're involved." And so that's what kind of really sealed the deal. I think there was a time, though, we gave him an award at our church for Community Service Award. And I think, and she doesn't know this, but what really sealed me being a part of his life is when I came back to the table while he was accepting the award, and his wife was sitting there. And after I had spoken, she was crying and said she just really was apologetic for him sending me to jail. And I thought, okay, this is an amazing couple. This is it. This is how we roll. And you got to find those people that are more expert at what you do and submit yourself to them, so you can get to where you want to go. And so that blessed me right there.
That's the tenacity and the persistence that so many people listening can really benefit from modeling, Bishop, because mentees ask me all the time, like, I know somebody who I think would be a great mentor, but I don't know them, or I'm intimidated by them, or what have you. And just being of service yourself and being tenacious and being persistent it's such a great model. Thanks so much for sharing that. I appreciate that.
And it's a shame that prospective mentees feel that way, because I truly think that there's a bit of a mentor in every one of us, a bit of a teacher.
Yeah.
And nothing is more flattering than to have a person come up to you and say, "I'd like you to be my mentor." So the message I'd like to send to all prospective mentees is, don't hesitate to approach someone. Just be very, very sincere in that approach. Don't cover it up with false flattery or anything else. Just tell how you feel.
Yeah. The other thing that's so amazing about what I'm hearing is, a lot of times mentees will do, or sometimes mentees will do the opposite, and they'll say, I know exactly the person who I want to be my mentor, so I'm just going to go up and right away I'm going to say, hey, will you mentor me? And that's not what you did, Bishop. Is you actually showed up, you persistently showed up, you kept being the kind of person that any mentor would want to mentor. Over time, you really, in addition to the persistence, you had the patience to continue to seek Judge Rice out as somebody to be in your life in a meaningful way. How has the relationship morphed over time?
It's been amazing for me. You answering that question and thinking of the previous question, I had two things that really motivated me. Number one, I just felt like there was an opportunity for God to break a stigma between an older white Jewish gentleman and a young Black Christian, and that in our town that's not what you see together. And I went to private school and in Miami Valley, and that's not what I saw. That wasn't the relationships that took place. And with most of the older white Jewish families, the Black people were the servants in their house and in their quarters. And that was just the reality that I had. But I had a very strong upbringing when it came to being very proud and appreciative of our history as an African-American male, and understanding that there is excellence among young Black males, even after there was a mistake. And so I just believe that stigma had to be broken, number one, and not from Judge's standpoint, but from my standpoint. We can't fear allowing someone older white male to mentor us and not have a slave master mentality, and not allow post-traumatic slave syndrome to overtake us in getting what you needed. The second thing was my father, by many people, was said to be a better baseball player than Jackie Robinson, but just didn't get the opportunity because of the time and space that he was in. And I've heard that years and years. Even Earl Weaver said that he was one of the best baseball players he'd ever seen. Well, I didn't glean from my father. I was a very good baseball player, but I just was rebellious. I wanted to do it my own way. And when I came home, I said, what I missed with my father, I'm not going to miss again. And so if I see greatness again, I'm going to surround it or get around it and get up under that shadow, so that there's no reason to be around greatness and stay mediocre. So that was my mindset. And so that's what I did with Judge Rice. So what it has evolved to is that I may not ever be great in anyone else's eyes, but I've always wanted to become the greater me every day. And I believe someone like Judge Rice would be the person that I could glean from and see and become that person. And I just believe that every person, not only what Judge Rice says I agree with, can be a mentor, but every person needs one. You need someone that can show you the way, that can guide you, and also be able to tell you to sit down when you've gone too far.
And I certainly would endorse what the bishop has said. I would have gotten nowhere in my career were it not for a mentor or two, maybe more, who took an interest in me and guided me. And they're long gone, unfortunately, and the names probably wouldn't resonate with anyone seeing this podcast. But I am forever indebted to them for the help they gave me.
Yeah. Let me ask a question that's a follow-up to what both of you said. Bishop, you had said, have a mentor who can tell you when to sit down and be quiet, right? And, just before this call, we had another conversation. We're talking with a client, we're talking about feedback and the importance of creating an environment for tough feedback in mentoring relationships, right? The good stuff, for sure, you want to have the positive feedback, but sometimes you got to have that. It's time to sit down, go sit down, or Judge, maybe it's that you didn't process emotion the correct way or something, whatever that tough feedback is. How do you give that to one another in your mentoring relationship? How do you set the ground for having the conversations that are more difficult?
Well, my answer, Lisa, very briefly, would be that your relationship would be such, and you have to informally set these boundaries at the beginning, that we will speak frankly to one another, we won't be politically correct, and that I have your best interest at heart, and I know you do mine. And with that caveat, then I think a very open relationship can take place. That may be oversimplified, but I think that's an absolute prerequisite.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think the respect that we gave one another immediately, I absolutely honor who he is as a man and his role in the community. And in my eyes, he had nothing to gain in this relationship with me. He was Judge Rice. There was nothing to gain. He was set. I mean, he's already the icon of Supreme Court judges and federal judges in our area. There's, he's already set a legacy. I mean, doggone, there's a building named after him, and he's alive and well on planet Earth. And so, um, eh, but he allowed me space to be honest. He allowed me space to respectfully speak my mind. And I think that it just kind of worked that by him allowing me to do that, he could agree or disagree, and I had learned to accept that. And normally if he disagreed, I took that to heart, that I had to really go check myself because Judge disagrees or did not see it completely the way that I saw it. And he is so eloquent when he disagrees. It is so amazing. You don't know he disagreed until the conversation's over and you've hung up the phone and you'd be like, well, I don't think Judge agreed with what I said, but he made me see it his way. And so my wife kind of has a way of doing that as well. So I thank God for moving those people in my life. I think they talk behind my back a little bit, but I think that was it, Lisa. Just a matter of respect and consideration, and that right away I knew that Judge, he said it perfectly, that he had my best interest in mind. So even if the correction or the redirection or the disagreement was there, I knew that he had my best interest in mind. And so his intention was good. And for me, intention is a motivator for me. When I know your intentions are right, then say what you need to say and help me see it another way. And I can be difficult sometimes. Now I can be difficult, Lisa. I'm going to go for it. If I think I'm on it, I'm going for it now. I'm going to be honest. My wife probably shouting amen. We got her on mute, so leave her on mute.
Judge?
Do you want to invite her on this podcast, Bishop, or leave enough alone?
Not today. We'll leave well enough alone.
All right. The first thing, the Bishop, first of all, our relationship is not based anywhere near exclusively on the fact that he stalked me for all this time. Certainly, that demonstrated his sincerity in wanting to do the right thing in the community. But by the time we really formed a bond, he already had a track record of service to the community. So I already knew he was genuine. I already knew he was paying that debt, so to speak. And the first thing he said to me after hello, and we talked about a particular project, was I, meaning the bishop, would never do anything to take advantage of me or put me into an embarrassing situation. And, I believed him without reservation. And let me put it this way, the trusting relationship was formed very, very early in our interactions.
Fantastic. I want to circle back to something that you said at the beginning, Judge, in terms of the benefits that you've had from this relationship. And I'd love it if you could share with me and the folks who are joining us today and who will be watching the recording, how have each of you benefited from this relationship? Is there a way to talk a little bit more about what the benefits you found in your life to be?
Well, the benefits are several-fold. Number one, I think some of the initiatives that we began working on have proven successful. But secondly, and I meant this sincerely, Lisa, I have learned more from him than he could possibly have learned from me. And that's not idle talk. I truly, truly mean it. And whether that's, I'll give you an example, and I hope this isn't seen as off the wall. I have always tried, let me back up. I was very, very lucky early in life to meet people, have relationships with people that are with me until this very day. And I was lucky early on that I had relationships with African Americans. And by the time I was 7 or 8 years old, when I was told that those relationships weren't proper or that they were frowned on, for some reason, God-given, and my parents, God-given, told me that what I had been hearing was poppycock. But even so, I've never lived the African-American experience. I think I understood it intellectually, but not really in my heart and soul. And without lecturing me and just talking to him and talking about various projects, I learned so much. I learned a little bit more than I knew intellectually about the prison experience. I learned a little bit more than I had ever learned intellectually about institutionalized racism, not the overt Jim Crow type relationship or racism, but racism from the racism as expressed, demonstrated by facially neutral laws, rules, regulations that have a disparate impact on others, the kind of racism that sometimes people who smile at you are really anxious to have a chance to get you from behind, so to speak. And he gave me what other things have, for which I'll ever be eternally grateful, a postgraduate course in people. I wouldn't be successful in my career if it weren't for a number of African Americans, people whose names maybe never made the newspaper or never held high office. And what the bishop did was to help further cement my belief that I've had since I was a child, that there is no difference between us except, I hope you don't think I'm spewing bromides. There's no difference between us except the meaningless difference in the color of our skins. And I'm forever grateful to him and for all those people who educated me along the way.
Thank you, Judge. Bishop, how about you? How have you benefited from the relationship?
I think, since growing up and watching, my parents and especially my mother with her social work, recognizing the value of individuals and finding out what's important in the community, what affects people. I think Judge just, made the landscape easy to see as it related to what I needed to ask for guidance from God to impact as it related to being a preacher or a pastor and a community advocate and servant. Just kind of laid out those things that were important just because he saw them as important. And housing and hunger and it lined up, for me amazingly with the biblical text that was guiding my actions at the time. And it was just amazing that I saw it in practical ways. And then his work with race relations was really authentic. And it wasn't to build him up. It wasn't to give him a special platform. And so I learned how to navigate those type of waters without being a tyrant, without blasting, without using a trumpet. You know, sometimes you soothe hearts with a saxophone, you blow out ears with a trumpet. And I know from my standpoint, the Bible says blow the trumpet. And so right away, I'm thinking I got to make a lot of noise. You know, I've got to go out and march and do those things. And they're important. Don't get me wrong. But there was another avenue, and it was the boardroom. It was policy. It was decision makers. And I saw Judge having impact with those individuals from afar, that when he brought me near, those are the people we were talking to. And so now I've learned that it's about the influence that you have on the inside. It's about joining organizations, about becoming active, that you can make change that needs to be made. You can't do it as well externally. You have to be internally involved. And so that was amazing for me for the ministry and the community work. But I also heard him make reference, and I've watched him over the last few years, especially maybe 8 years, especially how much he loves his wife and how much he's a family man. He loves his children, and he talks about, them visiting and him going to see them. And it's just another one of those individuals that reminded me, with all the work that you do, family is still, prominent and imminent, and you cannot forsake that. And so I saw that with my father, but a lot of times I saw a lot of, just other things that didn't always promote that. But between him and my bishop and others, it became very important to me. And it became very important to me that my wife be able to speak well of me in the community authentically. And before, as a young African-American male, I'm not saying I didn't care, but that wasn't on the forefront. I wanted people to speak well of me. I wanted governors to speak well of me. But if the people that know you the best can't authentically speak well of you, then there needs to be some character changes. There needs to be some shifts. And so as a man, that was major for me. And so I just appreciated, him doing that. And I just watched him, and he you would think that Miss Bonnie Beeman runs the house, and so that's okay. And I found out that you can be a prominent man and that be okay. And if she runs the house, then I'm in trouble, because I'm learning to try to let Angela run the house. And so that's going to be totally different from me and how I was brought up. But so if that happens, it's Judge's fault. And so, but Angela's good to run the house. She's okay to run the house. I can trust her with it. But it is some of those things that are really important, because for me, I was educated well. I had a phenomenal mother. I have a phenomenal father. I had a great marriage model in front of me. I've said this for years, and I meant it. I know my father's not perfect, and I know he made some mistakes over the years, but from a Christian standpoint, I've never seen him sin. I've never known of his. So I know that integrity is possible, even though in most of those areas I didn't attain that. And you need that as a young Black male in America, that you don't have to live up to stereotypes, and different things don't have to be a part of your dossier. And Judge Rice just in his own way, was a great influence in being a man in America. And so I can take some of the things off the front of it. I don't have to be a Black man in America. I can be a man in America. And that's going to be what's most important first. And for me as a Christian man, and then a Black Christian man, all those things come later. But I think manhood was really important, and he played a role over the last at least 10 years of just watching how he operated as a father, as a husband, as a man of the community, outside of the Your Honor, without losing the Your Honor. So it's good to know how to be Mark, and not always have to try to be Bishop. And Mark can be more impressive than Bishop.
Beautiful. Beautiful. I'm glad we're recording this, because I'll watch that alone three or four more times to digest it. Wonderful. So I want to shift just a little bit, because you've learned a lot in your mentoring relationships with each other, and probably in mentoring relationships that you've had with others in the course of your careers and your lives as well. So I'm wondering what advice each of you would have for people who are new to mentoring, to mentees specifically. What advice would you have for new mentees?
Bishop? Or...
It's a hard word. My brother's on this call, and he's always just been that type of person with me. He's as bright, as innovative as you can get, but I'm probably that dogmatic big brother. But he's always been this way with me, and I think he's learned a lot, even without us dotting I's and crossing T's with each other. I think you just have to submit. You have to admit, first of all, that this person knows more than you in the area in which you're trying to become prominent in, and just be willing to submit. That is such a horrible word in society. And again, for Black men, that is a tough word because of slavery, and that post-traumatic slavery syndrome sometimes just won't let us submit and to take instruction and to take redirection and to be corrected. A great mentor of mine here in Jacksonville came today, and he needed to correct something about the model that we do. I'm very innovative. I think ahead, but right now in this season and the era that we in, I needed to bring that down. And I think earlier in life, I would have took that as an insult to my intelligence and to my creativity and to what I wanted to create. And you're trying to hold me back. But because of maturity and being around people like Judge, I had to tell him today, hey, don't hesitate to redirect me if it's for the good of the organization. So I think mentees have to understand that redirection is protection. Correction is protection. And if you have someone that sees something that you may need to take another look at it, take another look at it. You haven't been there where before. I'm 54. I've never been 55. Judge has been 55. He's worked in community as a 55-year-old. He was a professional at 55. I've never been that. What can I tell him about being a 55-year-old professional doing community work in a city as a prominent individual? Nothing, because I've never been there. A book can't help me with that. Technology can't help me with that. And guess what, Lisa? I can't even Google that. I have to speak to someone who's been there that can help me move forward. And I think for mentees, submission, just being willing to hear it, process it. And sometimes you got to eat the meat, spit out the bones. But most times you need to pay close attention to what's taking place and what you're being told.
Well, putting aside for a moment that I have not yet attained the age of 55, I think the most important thing, Lisa, is to establish a trust. To establish with the mentee or the mentor, depending on your position in the relationship, that we should feel free to ask each other why things happen. As a mentee, why are you pointing me in this direction? The mentee should be free to ask the mentor any questions about his career, or her career, how the mentor handles a particular situation that may have come up in their professional life. I was lucky with the bishop because having heard everything he was doing in the community, my presumption was this is a man I can trust without reservation. We didn't have to get to know each other before establishing that. And one thing I'd like to say, so I don't forget, this man has been a mentor to more persons than to me. When he was called to go to Jacksonville, maybe 5 years ago, he had mentored and continues to mentor to this day his successor at the Potter's House Church, Pastor Kenneth Moss, who is, in my opinion, a brilliant successor, not replacement, because he can't be replaced, but a brilliant successor to Mark McGuire. And he has influenced so many people to the good. For example, there's a program called Dayton Urban Young Life. I don't know whether you've heard about it, but it mentors younger people, anywhere from 7th and 8th grade up through high school. And there are chapters and places in the Dayton community that are suburban in nature. No one ever undertook the responsibility of establishing a chapter solely for inner city children until Bishop McGuire came about. And that chapter is succeeding, even after he got it up and running for the first several years. And I would hope you would ask him what types of things he's doing in Jacksonville. I've heard about them secondhand because he doesn't brag about what he does, but they would literally, I hate to use this tawdry expression, blow your mind. They are so creative, innovative, and successful.
I love that. And I will ask you, Bishop, about those. Just would love to hear those. I know the folks watching would, but before I do that, let me phrase the next question just a little bit differently, because we talked about advice for new mentees. Tell us some advice for new mentors. Somebody who's not been a mentor before, what would you tell them?
Bishop, I'm talking too much, so please go ahead.
I love listening to you. So, I know my wife's probably like, baby, you're talking too much. Let Judge say something. You know, I think first and foremost, it should be humbling that someone finds you valuable enough that they're willing to put a career, a dream, their personality, you know, so to speak, in your hands, or at least trusting you enough to help guide them to the next dimension of their lives. And so, and sometimes it could be in your pedigree. Sometimes it could be things that you've accomplished that draws them in. But whatever it is, it should be, first of all, humbling. And I think so we have to go into that humble. The second thing I think is that we have to, you know, be great listeners to what it is they're trying to accomplish, and not try to proselyte or duplicate yourself, but help them to evolve and to become what it is that they believe that their destiny is calling for. And I think in some instances, I've seen people try to replicate themselves in other people kind of purposely. Sometimes that happens. Sometimes you do, you know, you become what you behold. But I think there's times when you just got to let them grow and make some mistakes and come to you and ask for your opinion, your advice, your wisdom, that you can't try to treat them like a puppy and train them to how you want them to act, you know. But I think it's allowing people to evolve in a way that's going to create the best them as possible. And I think over the years, and Judge mentioned it, I've been asked, you know, purposely or kind of informally to mentor so many people that I've learned here lately that I want to do it from behind the scene. I want to make sure that whatever it is I'm helping you do, I don't overshadow what and who you're becoming, because I think that's very important. He talked about Ken Moss and the fact that he was the successor at the Potter's House, and he's on here as well. That we talked about the ghost of Mark McGuire, that we didn't want the ghost of Mark McGuire to haunt the Potter's House to where he could not become a great pastor. That, you know, eventually and as quickly as possible, we have to make sure that the handprint and the footprints that are there are now his. Yes, there's a history. Yes, some people came up under my tutelage. Yes, there's going to be some loyalty. However, kind of like Eddie Murphy said, there's a new sheriff in town, and you can't try to live your present or your future just based on historical relationships. So I'm learning more and more how to peel back my visibility open up my accessibility and increase the mentee's possibilities.
Mm.
And I think that's kind of becoming my mantra,
Okay. Can
See,
you say
that's-
that mantra one more time?
to try to decrease my visibility, to open up my accessibility, and to increase the possibilities of the mentee.
Ooh,
AVP.
AVP.
Remember that.
AVP.
Uh,
Judge?
That's a brilliant answer. And the only thing I can add, because I can't improve on what the bishop said, is this. Too many times older people, and I'm talking about, I guess, the cutoff age, 55 and older, want to hang on at all costs. And the last thing they want, although they would never express it, may not realize it, is for their mentee to replace them, to outshine them. And what a horrible attitude that is, because in the final analysis, our legacy in large part is based on those we have mentored, those who have taken what we said and adopted or rejected, whatever they see fit. But they are our legacy, not the fact that at one time someone was a judge or someone was a bishop. So mentors need to have the right mindset. And absent that, they're not going to be very good mentors. And they're not going to expose their mentee to all the opportunities and possibilities.
Wow, it's a double mic drop on that response from
Wow.
both of you. I love that. Both fantastic. Thank you so much. I want to take a pause for 1 second. I do want to ask you, Bishop, about what you're doing in Jacksonville. Before you
Okay.
answer, let me just say a couple of quick things. So the winner of the book giveaway is Heather Taylor Oatley. Heather, if you would message Michelle, congratulations and thank you for joining. If you would message Michelle Hancock directly with the address for us to send the book and which book you'd like, you can choose Bridging Differences for Better Mentoring, which is about having conversations across difference in mentoring, or the Mentor's Guide, which is a workbook for mentors. Would love to send you a signed copy of that book. So please message Michelle Hancock so we can be sure to send that to you directly. And also, before Bishop answers, I want you to be thinking about your questions. We'll have a few minutes for you to ask questions of Judge Rice or Bishop McGuire. So with that, Bishop, tell us about the work you're doing in Jacksonville.
I'm presently honored to be the Director of Discipleship, Outreach, and Evangelism with the church. And so here we're very busy just trying to meet the felt needs of people in the community. Just the old Matthew 25:35, life after the benediction, feed the hungry, clothe the naked, visit those in the nursing homes and prisons and the downcast and the downtrodden, and just trying to give them hope and to help them see that there is a light for them to aspire to have in their lives through a relationship with Christ. And so that keeps me a little busy. And then I'm the director through our Community Development Empowering Corporation, Cure Violence on the West Side of Jacksonville. And it is an organization modeled after Cure Violence Global that approaches gun violence as an epidemic and as a health issue. And so we empower what we call credible messengers as neighborhood healthcare professionals. And we equip them and train them so that they can detect and interrupt transmission of gun violence, to help stop the spread of gun violence, and then to change the norm about gun violence, just the way we would do with the coronavirus or any other epidemic that's touching the world, and just using some of the social determinants of health to kind of put us in those positions to do that once we find individuals that are actively involved, or what we call high-risk individuals, using these credible messengers as a vaccine, going back into the communities where they have influence, and getting involved with what we call key individuals in the community that kind of know what's going on, to stop retaliation, to mediate, and to wrap services around those individuals, especially that are in gangs, that want to come out and try to have a normal lifestyle. So we use what we call violent interrupters and outreach workers. So that's Cure Violence. And then the CARES Justice Institute, which Judge Rice sits on as our president of the board. My wife sits on the board and is our strategic planner and our chief strategist, and Bonnie Beeman Rice, who's on here, sits on the board. We started something in Dayton, Ohio, to not only eradicate racism, but to deal with disparities, lack of equity and equality for people of color, especially, but for all human beings, and just trying to find out, ways to advocate for those who are normally marginalized. And so that work kind of expanded to Jacksonville, working with Bethune-Cookman University, and making sure that dealing with law enforcement, using the 6 pillars of 21st century policing from the Obama administration, looking at the zones in Jacksonville, putting together action plans to help with community and police relations, working with Jacksonville Sheriff's Office in the same capacity, building bridges and creating careers with young people in the schools. We've had 3 opportunities now to just bring in law enforcement to have what we call critical conversations with young people, so that we can begin to talk about what some of those myths and some of those angst are between the community and law enforcement, and to begin to bridge that gap and to show that there's a great career in law enforcement. So there's not, not only a breakdown, but so that there's not animosity. And then I work with Think Tank, and we also are doing simulations for the cost of poverty experience, so that people can understand what it feels like to live a life of poverty and how they have to navigate every day, and to build up empathy and show value amongst individuals. And then a lot of it also is just going in and mentoring young kids and teachers and administrators through full service schools, which my wife is a director or coordinator of here in Jacksonville, to help with bullying and microaggression and gun violence, and doing those things. And then last but not least, what I can think of right now is that God blessed me to become the first national gang specialist in Florida and Ohio through the National Center for Gang Training, that we're trying to bring to Dayton, Ohio. And they've asked me to be the liaison for Ohio for the National Center, Christian Claudio. So just kind of the same work in different areas, getting different outcome measures, looking at things from a different perspective, trying to create different solutions, but evidence-based solutions. And so just excited, working with Safe Passage here as well, with the JSO and other organizations, and just trying to make a difference in the community and kind of reduce the gun violence and build up and empower young people.
Wow.
Now,
And
what he didn't,
go ahead, Judge. No, please.
I was going to say what he omitted was the fact that he manages to sleep for 90 minutes every night.
That's what I was going to say. And there's sleep between 1:30 a.m. and 2:30 a.m. And with that, you're able to function more than most people. Bishop McGuire, wow, amazing work. You're somebody who walks the walk.
Well, I have an amazing wife who not only allows me the space to do a lot of work, to talk to a lot of people, to be busy, but she jumps right in and makes me look good. She cleans up all my paperwork, does everything that needs to be done, and to make me look good in presentations and PowerPoints and all that kind of stuff. And so it's good and it's great. I love to be busy. It's very gratifying and fulfilling to me to feel like I am trying to leave an indelible mark in the lives of people and make some kind of impact. And so when I leave and stop breathing, I can at least take that last breath knowing that I tried. Don't know if I succeeded, but I tried.
Wonderful. Well, a few last words. One is I want to just invite the folks. I don't see any questions in the chat, although I see a lot of accolades about how inspiring this has been. And I know it has been for me as well. I want to ask the people who have joined us in the chat to just write one word that you're walking away with from this amazing conversation with Judge Rice and Bishop McGuire. I also want to offer to you, we will put in the chat, Bishop McGuire talked about building bridges, and we have some resources for people who are interested in learning more about diversity, equity, and inclusion in the mentoring context, which you can click on and download as well. So you'll see Michelle has posted that, but I'm seeing words like give back and inspiring. I'm seeing the celebration emoji and hope. There was a comment about how inspiring and fulfilling this has been. Having known both of you personally, David Greer says how he concurs with everything that's been shared. So last words of wisdom, Judge Rice, Bishop McGuire. Judge, why don't we go to you? Anything you want to leave us with before we leave today?
Well, I just would like to emphasize that many of the things that the bishop is doing in Jacksonville, he was instrumental in starting here in Dayton. Secondly, I heard a sermon on Sunday from an excellent pastor, and I wish I could repeat it verbatim. Something to the effect that you need to get out of your comfort zone. You need to become comfortable with the uncomfortable. And Pastor Moss, I butchered that and I apologize. But what he meant was applied to the mentorship relationship. I wouldn't be much good to someone who is growing up the way I grew up, or is being raised in the manner in which I am living. I believe that my role is best in the mentoring and working with young people who are growing up in a lifestyle different than mine. Not so I can preach to them middle-class values, but so that I can be there for them, show them the possibilities that this life holds, and that nothing can interrupt or stall their dreams and ambitions, except they're making the wrong decisions. So you need to be comfortable with something outside of your comfort zone. And that's the best advice I can give.
Wow.
Great advice. Bishop?
Live with gratitude. I appreciate every day. I really do. I don't deserve another day. So I appreciate every day, and learn to appreciate every day, and take your best authentic self genuinely into each and every day. And on the cusp of Martin Luther King Day, I would say, if you can't run, walk. If you can't walk, crawl. But whatever you do, don't stop. Don't stop moving.
Wonderful. Thank you, Judge.
I want to say this. First of all, I concur that Bishop McGuire is fortunate to have a wonderful wife, and I mean that sincerely. But I too would like to make that claim. It's interesting. I don't think my wife and I had many discussions of this nature before we were married. It'll be 40 years next month. But we've come together in our interests, and we've grown together. And I consider myself blessed.
The most important decision we make, right, is who we choose to walk through life with as our partner. So
Yes.
glad to know you both chosen well. And knowing Angela, who is a member of the Center for Mentoring Excellence team, I think she's a rock star too. So for what it's worth, she shows up wonderfully in every context, as I know you know, Bishop, as well. I want to just thank the two of you again.
you.
What a honor a privilege, inspiration. I can't wait to watch the recording, which we'll of course be sending to the two of you and available for the folks who watched and who couldn't join today. Congratulations on really inspiring others and having this relationship that's been so sustaining for both of you. And thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. God bless
Thank
you.
you. And I reiterate that. God bless you, and thank you for what the two of you are doing. It's so very, very important. The only way that we're going to be able to help turn around this younger generation, particularly those at risk young people, is through mentoring. So you're truly doing God's work, and thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
God
you.
bless.
Be well. God bless you. Take care.
Have a super month. Bye-bye.